Good morning, everyone. It's great to be here, and with the speaker, along with the executive director of the Rhode Island Leagues and Cities and Towns, along with our executive director of Rhode Island Housing, Carol Ventura. So let's talk about housing. When I became a parent, I imagined what the future would look like for my adult children. Today, I'm focused on our grandchildren, just like many people are in the state of Rhode Island, in terms of their ability to actually live in the communities that they grew up in, if that's their choice. And the future I envisioned included not only our families, but also their careers, but places my children could call home, places my grandchildren can call home, our children can call home, our grandchildren can call home. And I think that's what we're here to talk about today. Since I've been governor, working with the speaker, we've put an emphasis on housing production, and from the income stratospheres, as well as all the way through the fair market values, which again, that a proper mix is what creates strong communities, strong economies. I just met with the realtors earlier this morning on this very issue. So let's talk about how we can make it happen for our families that live in the state. First, we have a growing Department of Housing, made up of dedicated professionals, and led with the expertise and determination of Secretary Deborah Goddard. Second, we have a new governance structure that gives us a clear direction and authority to take necessary and timely action. And third, we have a blueprint for that action called Housing 2030 that sets clear goals to improve on the current landscape. And fourth, we have great partners in this work, including Rhode Island Housing, the Providence Revolving Fund, municipal leaders across the state. And lastly, on top of the $250 million of APRA funds that we put into the budget just a few years back, and we've created a production that is significant in the state right now. I think close to 67 housing units either have been constructed or in the pipeline since I've been governor, and the speaker's been speaker. This is a major move in the right direction. But today, we're going to talk about what we're going to work through is the phase one of the $120 million bond. And I really applaud all those people that Secretary Goddard has been working with to come to this moment where we can actually explain how we're going to allocate these funds in a way that really helps create more and more production. It includes helping cities and towns and municipalities planning and infrastructure to support housing development, supporting low and moderate income homeowners and landlords with home repairs, encouraging the development of new affordable rental housing, including permanent supportive housing, and small-scale missing middle projects. Yesterday we were in town Lincoln, where they're converting a mill that is going to convert almost, I think it was 124 housing units. And this is happening all around the state right now. We're going to ribbon cuttings, we're going to groundbreaking, and then we're talking about strategies that can help develop plans that can create more production. Supporting the redevelopment of blighted or vacant properties, which was part of the bond's language. That's about $80 million in targeted investments, and that's just phase one. We will have more information about phase two in the coming months, which includes funding for homeownership. I believe that homeownership is a very important issue that we need to pay strong attention to so that we can have first-time homeownership, and also where seniors are transitioning from larger homes into spaces that make more sense as they enjoy their retirement. Homeownership is a key to strengthening communities, and that's part of the plan, and I'm proud that's something that we're embracing. Housing 2030 is a neutral offshoot of our Rhode Island 2030 plan for Rhode Island's future. That plan, in summary, is providing opportunities for our young people to reach their potential, whether it's in their academics, their arts, their athletics, and to supporting that as we're opening up 20 some odd municipal learning centers in the state of Rhode Island, prioritizing education, and so that the goal is that a culture that in every home, every day, learning matters. That's one of the key components. Can't have that without housing. You're not going to achieve that goal without housing. And that's why it's such a priority. And then raising incomes. That's the second piece of the 2030 plan. We want to see every home in the state of Rhode Island raise their incomes. Because we know that housing insecurity, food insecurity can be addressed to a certain degree by raising incomes in every household. And then finally, making sure we're healthy enough to enjoy living in this great state. And as we go forward, which is part of the plan that is working, we're putting people to work, building things, that the things that are being built are going to pay off for decades to come, whether it's in our private sector or our public sector. These bond investments we are announcing today are crucial levers to support our continued economic development, including attracting and retaining working families. Since I've been governor, we've added 36,000 private sector jobs in the state of Rhode Island. Housing is an important piece of continuing that growth. But on a more basic level, it's about making spaces for Rhode Islanders to call home. And that's what we're here to talk about today. I'm really proud to be bringing up Speaker Shekarchi, who has made this one of his most important goals as a speaker and a leader in the state. So Speaker Shekarchi, come on up and share your words of wisdom with us.
Thank you, Thank you, Governor. Exciting day. I always like to talk about housing. It actually is one of the more fulfilling aspects. So as the governor stated, just to dovetail on it, it's everybody working together. It's myself, the Senate President, the Governor, Rhode Island Housing, the League of Cities and Towns, Deborah Goddard, Secretary of Housing. It's all of us in this room committed to create more and more production. And it's not every day that I'm in this room at a press conference that I'm actually going to say something directly to the media, which is a heartfelt thank you. Thank you, Steve Alquist. Thank you, Chris Shea, for talking about housing, for highlighting it. Thank you to my friends at Channel 12 and at Channel 10. I don't see anybody here, but also the Journal. Usually it's Cooper Wheelwright, always talking about housing. It's critical, it's important, and it helps. It helps, you know how it helps? Because we passed in Rhode Island by an overwhelming majority the single largest housing bond in the history of the state. The governor proposed $100 million. We in the General Assembly, with a lot of effort from everyone else and a lot more good management, we were able to increase that by about 20%. The single largest housing bond passed overwhelmingly. All of the advocates, Providence Revolving Fund, Neighbors Welcome, the Housing Network, I'm going to forget, there's like 4 or 5 of them. They all work very hard to do that. And it's paying off. I want to give you some statistics. From the year 22 to 23, we've had the single biggest jump in Rhode Island history on building permits. Building permits rose by 70% from 22 to 23. I know a building permit is not a house, but it's the beginning of a house. That's incredible. Last year, according to the Housing Fact Book, last week, we increased that number by an additional 15%. So it's happening, it's having a big effect. And it's only when we all work together that good things can happen, and they are happening. I wish it was happening faster, but it's not. But I will tell you, Rhode Island is in the forefront of this. I was in Congress last year, speaking before the U.S. Budget Committee in the Senate, talking about housing. Next month, Secretary Gott and I are going to go speak at a national conference in Washington, D.C., hosted by the National Builders Association, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, about the things that we're doing here in Rhode Island that are making a difference. I spoke recently to Governor Healy in Massachusetts about working collaboratively, about looking at ways that the state can actually get in the housing production business. Nobody can do this alone. It takes all of us. And the good news is we are all committed. The governor's committed, the advocate's committed, the legislator's committed, and we are making progress. And I don't say that lightly because it's not easy. And there's a lot of people who will push back and a lot of people who will, complain. But the reality is it's everybody I said, but it's also Randy Rossi. And it's also the League of Cities and Towns. Because Randy, the new head of that, worked collaboratively with us last year and supported the housing package that the General Assembly passed overwhelmingly. I'm thankful, I'm grateful for this, and this is a very small victory lap, but there's a lot more work to do, and we're committed to get it done. And as the speaker, I'm going to continue to put another housing package in next year. I'm going to continue to make housing front and center, not because I like it, which I do, and not because it's successful, because we're starting to see that, but because we need it in Rhode Island. And as I said this at every level, we need this at every level, from market level to workforce housing, to affordable housing, to low-income housing, to homelessness. We need more production, more beds, more units, the list can go on and on. And with that, it's my great pleasure to introduce a woman who's at the forefront of this, somebody who's extremely talented and dedicated, the Secretary of Housing, Deborah Goddard. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Before we dive into the details of what we're announcing today, I want to begin with gratitude, because addressing our state's housing challenges takes genuine collaboration. None of this work can be done alone, as everyone will attest to. While I hold the title of Secretary of Housing, the real change makers are the partners who show up every day, the people who work, advocate, and innovate to make sure Rhode Islanders have access to the housing they need to call the state their home. First, thank you to Governor McKee for your vision and leadership in making this historic investment in housing a reality. Under your direction, Rhode Island has made unprecedented investments to strengthen communities, expand opportunity, and improve the quality of life in every corner of the state. Your commitment to the goals of Rhode Island 2030, building a prosperous, healthy, and sustainable future, is supported at every level by housing. Thank you, Speaker Shekarchi, and the General Assembly as a whole for your partnership in passing the bond bill and for being relentless champions of housing. Speaker, your constant advocacy has made sure that no matter where you go in Rhode Island, people are talking about housing. That shift in conversation and culture is a part of what makes today's event possible. And I would be remiss if I didn't also call out Senator Basilian for his advocacy and his very strong voice for housing for everyone. Thank you to Carol Ventura and the team at Rhode Island Housing for your expertise and tireless work. We were reminded yesterday at a groundbreaking that Rhode Island Housing is the housing finance agencies other states aspire to have. The programs that Rhode Island Housing has made possible across municipalities, developers, and nonprofits would not be possible without your dedication. And I want to thank, it may seem odd, the Office of Management and Budget. Bonds are heavily regulated, and the new ideas that we were bringing brought new questions. So thank you, OMB, for being readily available to discuss our ideas and for your support. And thank you again to Randy Rossi and the League of Cities and Towns. You were a partner during the creation of the Housing 2030 plan. You were a sounding board and provided input during our discussions on how to deploy the bond funds. You've ensured that municipal voices are heard and local needs are reflected in every program. From day one of my top priorities has been to strengthen collaboration across the state and be a thoughtful steward of public dollars. The League has been instrumental in helping make that vision real. Thank you also to the staff at the Executive Office of Housing, a team of individuals who are committed to the mission of the office and work hard every day to achieve our goals. And thank you to the housing advocates, community organizations, private and nonprofit partners, and voters who supported the bond bill and continue to champion the cause of housing. Your voices, your energy, and your belief in this work are what makes this investment possible. Now, let's talk about what we're announcing in phase one of this rollout of the bond funding. Our goals in curating the bond funds have been to be strategic, responsive, efficient, and flexible. Begin with the funding going out directly from the executive office. We listened. Time and again, municipalities told us one of the largest obstructions to creating new housing in their localities was the lack of infrastructure: water, sewer, septic, sidewalks. We heard that concern, and therefore we doubled the $4 million for public infrastructure originally allocated in the bond bill, ensuring that resources go where they can have the greatest impact, in this case, to support municipalities and developers with critical infrastructure costs, opening up sites for development. We also listened to the suggestion to use municipal technical assistance funds in a manner that fits the bond. That funding, too, will support public infrastructure, going to the necessary pre-development costs of architectural and engineering work needed to support expanded infrastructure capacity. And I thank Randy for that proposal, literally. Finally, research shows that home repair programs are perhaps the most vital investments we can make in ensuring that lower-income households are able to maintain the homes they own. This has been borne out by the demand for the program that we've previously funded through the state fiscal recovery funds. We also know that it is incredibly difficult for households with rental vouchers to find apartments. A part of this problem is smaller landlords that have capital needs that mean their units cannot pass the HUD inspection standards. So, although it's not called out in the bond bill, we are investing in funding a statewide home repair program administered and operated by the Providence Revolving Loan Fund. In addition, we are working with our public housing authority partners to reach out to small landlords in their areas who, but for a need of repair, could accept a voucher. Efficiency and collaboration. My earlier remarks should make it clear, but as a reminder, partnerships are at the heart of the work we do. Rhode Island Housing has been a critical partner in designing and administering many of the programs funded by the state's historic $120 million bond funding. The bulk of our funds, those supporting rental housing, will launch later this week through Rhode Island Housing in a collaborative, statewide funding round, opening access to $66 million in additional bond-funded programs, streamlining the application, and combining state and federal resources to make it easier for developers and municipalities to build housing efficiently. But this is not about solely business as usual. Within that funding round, we have for the first time created a set-aside up to $10 million for preservation, funded equally by the bond funds and the Rhode Island Housing Trust Fund. Preservation is production's twin. We can't afford to lose housing that is currently affordable while we make our efforts to grow our stock overall. We also know that smaller scale projects have historically struggled to compete in funding rounds. For good reason, Rhode Island Housing has established a minimum threshold of 30 units for funding feasibility, as smaller projects often cannot sustain the administrative and financial burden of the federal tax credit program. However, we cannot rely solely on that program to be the engine in producing housing for Rhode Island, or we limit our production. To address this, we have created 2 new set-aside programs for small-scale housing developments. A set-aside for smaller-scale housing, rental housing generally, and a set-aside for permanent supportive housing. Smaller-scale permanent developments are often the most appropriate vehicle for supportive housing, for infill housing, and for siting within communities that do not have a strong public infrastructure system. We are confident these set-asides will open up new opportunity for housing production. On flexibility, the manner in which we invest the bond funds will be flexible and cost-effective to meet the needs of a worthy project. As stewards of public funds, we will always keep an eye on investing wisely. But the return on the investment of the bond funds is the housing that we are creating and preserving. The bottom line for these investments are the improved outcomes in education, health, and economic opportunity for all Rhode Islanders, regardless of their age, income, origin, or community, because housing is the foundation in which all these other goals are built. I think you may all have sheets that outline and give an overview of the programs announced as the first wave that we are announcing today, part of the largest investment in housing in Rhode Island's history, as you've heard before. This bond is a cornerstone of our strategy to meet the goals of Housing 2030, our roadmap for expanding housing production, preserving affordability, and preventing instability. Collectively, these programs, totaling $81 million, will create and preserve thousands of homes, strengthening local economies, and ensuring that our public investments deliver measurable impact for Rhode Islanders. They reflect a shared commitment to making every dollar count, investing strategically, equitably, and efficiently. Together we are moving forward, and we're all making that happen. So again, thank you to everyone that's played a part, everyone that has spoken, offered their input, their advice, their criticism to our thoughts and ideas. And now I'd like to introduce my other half, Carol Ventura, CEO and Executive Director at Rhode Island Housing.
Good morning. I'm so happy to be here to celebrate the release of the first allocation of funds from the 2024 housing bond that we've heard Rhode Islanders overwhelmingly approved, almost 66% voters. Governor McKee, Speaker, Secretary, congratulations on this achievement. And thank you for your ongoing commitment to housing production and preservation in our state. We're all well aware of how difficult the housing market is right now, which makes these state investments all the more important. The more resources we can leverage, the more development we can support in all Rhode Island cities and towns. It's critical that we continue to finance a range of programs that support projects from the pre-development stage, shovels in the ground, and welcoming people home. We'll be releasing a consolidated funding round later this week, as you heard from the Secretary, which will include both state and federal financing programs. Federal low-income housing tax credits, which is the most powerful tool we have to finance the production of rental housing. Home and Housing Trust Fund programs, and the Housing Production Fund programs. This combined with state credits and other programs being offered through the Housing Department. We're excited about these continuing and new initiatives that will increase housing options and opportunities for Rhode Islanders, and look forward to getting these dollars out the door into our communities and continuing the momentum that we have of building, building, and more building. So thank you. And let me introduce our friend who oversees the League of Cities and Towns, Randy Rossi.
Thank you, Carol, and I definitely have to start off by saying how grateful we are at the League for the partnerships that we have with the governor and his team, the speaker and his team, the Senate President and her team, Secretary Goddard, and definitely Rhode Island Housing. It's these partnerships and having everyone around the table for really, I want to say, the first time in a long time to help make the difference that we're seeing. Across Rhode Island, our communities are making tangible, measurable progress in expanding housing opportunities. We see it everywhere we look. In Warwick, hundreds of new housing units have come online, particularly in the city center area, bringing a new vitality to the district that connects people to jobs, transit, and opportunity. Our League President, Mayor De Silva, is leading by example in the city of East Providence as it continues to grow, welcoming new developments stretching from Taunton Avenue all the way to the waterfront, a sign of what happens when local planning and private investment align. Just this week, as was spoken about earlier, Lincoln broke ground on a major mill redevelopment project that will breathe new life into a historic property. And in North Kingston, more than 500 new units are in the pipeline. This kind of growth that supports both housing demand and local economic strength. And those are just a few examples from Westerly to Woonsocket, from Burville to Bristol. Our cities and towns are hard to work every day, identifying sites, updating zoning, streamlining permitting, and working with developers to expand housing options. We're doing so not only to meet state goals, because we understand that safe, affordable, and accessible housing is fundamental to strong local economies and vibrant communities. However, even with this progress, there are very real barriers that can limit how quickly communities can move forward from plan to reality. Many of these challenges, unfortunately, are structural. Across Rhode Island, we're dealing with water systems that are nearly at capacity, aging infrastructure that was nearly designed to handle today's growth, and stormwater systems that struggle to keep pace with new development. Take Smithfield, my hometown, for example. A recent project faced significant runoff and drainage issues tied to older systems. These kinds of challenges can delay otherwise well-planned projects for months or even years, adding cost and uncertainty for both the municipality and the developer. That's why the state's investment is so crucial. Municipalities cannot shift already tight local budgets to upgrade water mains, expand sewer capacity, or replace storm drains to support hundreds of new housing units. Without this additional support, progress will stall, not for lack of will, but for lack of resources. This is where partnerships become essential. The League looks forward to continuing to work closely with the Governor and the General Assembly to establish these dedicated, sustained funding streams to help communities modernize their infrastructure in tandem with housing growth. This isn't just about building more units, it's about building communities that are safe, sustainable, and resilient. With the right tools, every Rhode Island city and town can contribute to solving our housing challenges while helping the state meet its goals and ensuring that growth happens in a way that strengthens local infrastructure, protects our economy, and preserves the unique character of each community. Together, we can make Rhode Island not only a more affordable place to live, but a stronger, more connected place to call home. And I thank you so much for all the hard work in getting this bond forward and making it work for all of our cities and towns.